John, welcome to the program. How you doing?
Thank you.
I hear our usual trains coming by.
Absolutely. Quite trains never fail.
Never failed. Although sometimes it works in your favor. So anyway, tell me how you got into theater.
I've been involved in theater on and off ever since elementary school.
Wow. So,
I don't know why, but I just always liked to get on stage. I guess I'm part ham.
what was your first show you ever did?
I don't remember the name of it, but I was Calm, the Gypsy Prince, and I sang a solo song called Soup Without Onions, and it was really fun.
Soup without onions.
Soup without onions is no soup at all.
It was a musical?
Onions and onions, no matter how small, etc. Yes, it was. I've always liked to sing, and my preference is to be in musicals, although I've done dramatic parts as well.
So what was the first show that you ever did, say, in high school?
The Rainmaker.
Really?
Yes, I was Starbuck.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, that's a good play. That's
It
a dramatic
was, and
play.
it was dramatic.
Yes, that's an excellent play. Excellent play. So do you prefer musicals? You said over straight plays?
Yes, simply because I really like to sing.
Right.
But I like to be on stage no matter what.
College, did you continue doing stuff?
I did not do drama in college.
Right.
I sang in the Glee Club.
Yeah.
You could only do I went to Dartmouth.
Okay.
It was a rigorous academic institution, and if you tried to do more than one extracurricular activity that took a lot of time and effort, you were in trouble unless you were a genius, and I don't rise to that category.
So what did you major in when you were in college?
I majored in Spanish.
Spanish?
Spanish, yes. I had some really lousy reasons for doing a lot of the things I did. I went to Dartmouth because my father went to Dartmouth.
Yeah.
I majored in Spanish because it enabled me to take a semester and go live with a Spanish family in Spain. My choices were based on just stuff I wanted to do at the time.
Sure, well, why not? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, life's too short. Might as well do things
Yeah,
you want to do.
exactly.
So, you got out of college. Did you use your Spanish degree?
Not right away. When I graduated from college, this is still when they had the draft, and I was in ROTC. So when I graduated, I was a second lieutenant, and I spent the next 5 years, 8 months, and 23 days in the Army. I was in Germany, I was in Vietnam, and then Fort Lee, Virginia. And
You're in ROTC, yeah. So,
go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, you were in ROTC.
Right, and afterwards I graduated. I went in the Army. They trained me briefly as an armor, which is tanks, platoon leader. I was then sent to Germany, where I served 2 years in an armored division, and then was a household furniture officer for the third year.
Furniture officer.
Yes, because I actually graduated with a regular Army commission, which is the same as type of commission you would get if you graduated from West Point.
Okay.
They have different kinds of commissions. They have
that.
reserve officer commissions, and then they have regular Army commissions. Regular Army, you are in until you get out. You don't have a specified term of service.
Oh, really? Interesting.
So, anyway, I was actually a quartermaster officer, but every officer has to serve 2 years in a combat branch.
Right.
So mine was armor.
Right.
Then I got put into that household furniture job, and that was absolutely the worst job you can imagine, because all you did was deal with angry, more senior officers'
Right.
wives.
Oh, dear.
And they always wanted something you couldn't give them.
That's right.
And it was just, I can't believe, I had a general's wife come in, literally, she wanted China, and she came in and just started taking it from the
What?
warehouse and taking it to her car, and I had German workers working
Right.
for me. And as she would come in to pick up another load of China, they would go into her car and take out what she had put in. And I got on the phone and called her husband, and I said, your wife is drunk down here, and she's trying to steal the China. And he apologized and came down and got her. But, I mean, we had this little merry-go-round going where she's out to the car. My people are waiting for her to come back. They run out to the car and get what she put in. It was really kind of funny. But that was a typical type thing that I had to deal with. I did learn people skills.
Yeah, I think you do. So, you did your stint in the Army. How long were you in the Army?
5 years, 8 months, and 23 days.
Oh, gee.
There it was.
And what happened to the 23 days?
Well, it just so happened I was immediately, that day, I was a second lieutenant on leave.
Right.
I got married, took a couple of weeks leave, got married, and then drove down to Fort Knox for my armor officer basic training. And I ended up leaving at the very end of, it was February, and it just turned out that's what it was.
So, after the Army, then what?
Well, the Army was kind enough to decide that they wanted me to be a petroleum officer, so I got several months of training in petroleum quality control, distribution, that sort of thing, and then they sent me to Vietnam for a year as a petroleum supply officer, so I really got some good hands-on experience. And while being in Vietnam was not a pleasant experience, it was from the standpoint of actually doing something meaningful and learning, really great from that standpoint. So when I was in Vietnam, I decided, okay, I like this. I like this petroleum business. I really like it. And I decided I would go to work in the oil industry.
Okay.
I had to resign because I had the regular commission. And at the time, since they were short of officers, they had a program called selective retention. And it was really selective. If you were a lieutenant captain or a major, and I was a captain, you were selectively retained. That's how selective it was. So I knew I would be retained for an extra year. Sure. So I submitted my resignation. They selectively retained me and sent me to Fort Lee, Virginia, to teach in the petroleum school. Okay. And during that time, I did my resume and went off on interviews and was fortunate enough to have a couple of job offers. And the best one was from Mobil Oil in New York City at the time. And so I went to work for Mobil. Okay.
So how long did you work at Mobil?
A little over 5 years.
Another 5-year stint.
Yes, I went to 5-year stints. It got shorter after that. Then I went to, it was that time around 1973 when we had the first oil crisis. Yes. Oil prices tripled or quadrupled. I don't remember when. Anyway, in Mobil, my main experience was in actually oil trading. Oh, yes. So these little oil trading companies sprang up, and there weren't very many traders out there. So they were desperate. It's supply and demand. They were offering lots and lots of money and lots of responsibility if they could recruit you. I was an easy recruit. I liked money and responsibility.
Who doesn't?
So after that, I probably, over the next 8, 10 years, I probably had 4 or 5 jobs, because what would happen is if you were doing fairly well, word got out, and then some other company would come in, and it got to be stupid. I mean, from the standpoint of, oh, you want me to come to work for you? Okay, if you'll pay me this much,
Right.
I'll come.
Right.
And it would almost always be, okay.
You didn't ask for enough.
It was like, wow. It was a crazy time.
Right, yeah.
It was a wonderful time,
Sure.
from the standpoint
Mhm.
of being able to make money and do things.
Mhm.
But it was extremely stressful.
Mm.
When you're dealing in large quantities of oil,
Mhm.
millions of gallons at a time,
Right.
A price move of a half a cent a gallon
Big money.
could be, 50 or 80 or $100,000, or, sometimes if you had a cargo, a tanker, you could make or lose $500,000.
Ouch.
And if you were losing it, your company was not happy.
And then let you know that.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my goodness. So you did this for about 5 years, right?
I would say it was more like 10.
Okay.
Yeah, 8
Different
to 10
companies,
years, different companies,
Right.
4 or 5 companies in 8 to 10 years. The thing about small companies is, once they're allowed about one mistake, and if they make a big one, they're out of business. And
That's
so,
true. Yeah.
if they made a big mistake all of a sudden where everything was fine the week before, it's
Right.
like the banks have pulled our credit line. Sorry, we're closing in 2 weeks. And
Was it?
fortunately, it was always easy to find another
Right.
job.
Right. Wow. So
Yeah.
about 10 years of this stuff, it sounds like you had enough. What did you do then?
Actually, I was working in New York, and then the company I was working for at the time decided they would close the New York office, but wanted to move everybody there to Houston. And
Okay.
I was looking at what was happening in the industry, and the industry was basically moving to Houston. Houston
Yes.
was where
Yeah.
the oil business was. So I took the transfer,
Mhm.
and 1978, January 1st, 1978,
Wow.
I became a resident of Texas.
Oh my goodness. So the first place that you lived, were you up in this area, in the Conroe area, or someplace else?
Actually, I lived over in the Memorial area.
Okay.
Derry, Ashford.
Sure, I know that area.
I-10,
Yeah.
that area.
Mm-hmm. So you were there for a while.
Yeah, and then things were going pretty well, and my first wife decided she wanted a lake house.
Mm-hmm.
And it's bad enough having one house.
Right.
I didn't want 2. So we compromised and ended up building a house on Lake Houston.
Okay.
And we moved out to Atascocita.
Okay. Yes.
And lived there. I'm not exactly sure even when we moved out there, but we were there 3 or 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
Then that phase of my life ended.
Okay.
And we went to phase 2.
Phase 2.
And been in phase 2 ever since.
So the phase 2. So when did you come to the Conroe area?
We moved up to this area in 2001.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
About the same time I did. Yeah.
We retired. Both of us.
Right.
My second wife and I retired within a month of each other. And she decided we really wanted to. We'd been looking for a place to retire anyway for the last 3 or 4 years. Been to several places in and out of Texas, and finally found a lot in Montgomery Trace.
Okay. Yes.
Okay, that actually was just perfect. It met her, all the things she wanted, and it met everything I wanted. And we decided we'd build a house there. And in our looking at various places, we've been to Bentwater, and we'd come across a house that we really liked. But Bentwater was crazy expensive, and the lots were small, and my wife wanted a big lot. And so we got the builder's card and called them and he had the plans.
Right.
And we modified them slightly,
Sure.
and he
Absolutely.
modified them slightly based on input he'd gotten from other people he
Sure.
built that house for.
Absolutely.
And we ended up on a little 15-acre lake on an acre and a half.
Nice.
In Montgomery Trace, and we've been there ever since.
Ever since, well. So what's the first show you ever did at the Crighton?
Oklahoma.
So you were in Oklahoma?
Yeah,
Okay.
I was in Oklahoma. That's where I first met Marilyn Llewellyn.
Yes, okay.
You know, she's
Okay.
my, I
Your
think
wife on
she's
stage.
doing her third or fourth stint as my stage wife. Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I don't know. We were both in the chorus in Oklahoma.
Right.
And then we did My Fair Lady.
Yes.
And
Yes.
we were paired there as,
Again, yes.
I can't remember my character, but it was husband and wife.
Yeah.
And then later, after My Fair Lady, I did Miss Saigon.
I think you missed one. I think you did Buddy Holly.
And Buddy
How
Holly.
can you forget
yeah.
Buddy Holly?
Oh,
My
that was
goodness.
fun. Because the Buddy Holly thing, for the most part, Marty Craig decided I would be a great manager for Buddy Holly. And I don't
Right.
remember the name of that character, but it was a dramatic part.
Yes.
And it was quite, in fact, during that opening night in that show, you know, you talk about people talking with their mics on, whatever. We had very powerful monitors on stage, and I had this long monologue.
Right.
And we were there, and I started talking, and some people were backstage, and they were just giggling and laughing and talking,
Right.
and it came through the monitor, and I literally probably blew 2 pages of script. It just threw me off that much. And Drew Prince, who was Buddy Holly, just picked it up. He just, you know,
He was
the
fabulous.
audience did not know
Right.
that all this dialogue had gone missing.
Right.
But, it's one thing I learned at that point. It doesn't matter. You can't be distracted by something. But it just was so sudden and so,
Right.
so I decided to sort of get even, and I got one of those styrofoam coolers,
Yes.
spray painted it black,
Yep.
ran some electric cord through it,
Right.
and when we had the pickup rehearsal on Wednesday, the following Wednesday, I arranged for some people to go backstage near that monitor and make noise, and I brought literally a large bolt cutter. And when it got to that part,
Right.
I started the dialogue. They started to giggle and whatever. And I
Right.
said, okay, pardon me for a minute, buddy. And I walked over to the desk where I planted the bolt cutters.
Right.
And picked them up and smashed that styrofoam speaker. Well, of course, Marty Craig thought I was smashing the real monitor. And it was like, oh my God, what are you doing? And then everybody realized this styrofoam was going
Right.
all over the stage.
Oh, dear.
But that was a learning experience. I'll tell you, and you know, those things happen.
Yeah.
Nobody ever did have their mic. Nobody talked backstage after that.
Hey, that's a good
It
thing.
was
We should remember that.
Yeah, it was fun though. Buddy Holly. The thing about Buddy Holly was there was very little stage time other than for old people like me. I mean, there weren't any really older characters in there other than
Right.
the manager. So I got to do backstage. They had a mic set up backstage, and actually the Crickets
Yeah.
never sang. They lip synced. The singers were me and 2 other people
Right.
backstage singing into a mic.
Oh,
while
I've forgotten
they-
that. I've forgotten that.
Yeah,
Yes,
while
yes,
they
yes.
lip synced up there. And,
It's like singing in the rain.
Yeah, because their guitars, they weren't actually playing their guitars either.
Right,
They
right,
were just up there. But the audience didn't know that.
No.
And so I got to do a great deal in Buddy Holly. It just was all backstage. Lots of singing, but nobody saw it.
Well, that's the first time we get to meet Elise, right? Because this was supposed to be, say, Buddy Holly was supposed to be one of these shows with very little set. And so Molly Good, who's the stage manager, said, "Oh, no, very little set. I don't need too much help." And then as time goes on, I need some help. Okay, well, how many people do you need? I don't know, 6. 6 people for backstage. What are we doing? It was a workout.
Oh yeah,
Carolyn,
and Elise organized
Rhonda,
that
Elise was in
thing.
there. Tom Lockhart was in there. There must have been 1 or 2 more folks.
Well, the other thing that you haven't mentioned is that Buddy Holly was supposed to be the first show at the Owen Theater, and
yes, it
they
was.
didn't get the Owen completed in time, so at the last minute,
we had
to move it over here to the Crighton.
Because everything was different.
Stage
yes, it's different.
Was different, and all of the,
Absolutely.
storing the sets and all of that stuff.
It was
so
very different, right?
It was a real quick change.
Yeah, all of a sudden,
it went real well, and the audience loved it. Dancing in the aisles.
Absolutely, they had a good time. The best part for the set crew was that last set, about 6 to 8 songs. Pretty much we were done by then, and we'd had our workout by then, moving stuff on and off. The biggest thing was remember the stage for the band?
Right.
Had to move on and off, and oh my goodness, because it had the drums on there too. It had to move as a unit.
Right.
Well, great.
And Teddy Gibson and those his relatives.
Yes,
the women who that played the African Americans in Harlem. I mean, I don't think I ever laughed as hard as watching, him perform this. What? You, a white boy, going to perform here? And Buddy Holly had no idea. I mean, they booked the band thinking it was a black band, and it was a fabulous show. That was a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun. Yeah.
And then Miss Saigon, that was a really interesting.
So what were you in the Saigon
show? Most of the shows I've been in the chorus,
right?
And I had a very small additional role as a captain. We had a little singing back and forth. Everything in the Saigon was singing, back and forth when they were getting ready to evacuate the embassy and whatever. But so it was. I had a lot of stuff to do. I was, in the chorus. I had that choreography with the poles and stomping them on the stage and spinning them and all of that good stuff. And it was a real different experience than most of the other stuff because of all the choreography. Yeah, and plus it's moving set pieces.
And other set pieces too.
I mean, because we do an awful lot of stuff.
Right.
Behind the scenes.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're not just sitting down.
And we don't get to just come to a few rehearsals, and do our music. It's
every
rehearsal.
No. That's the difference between a musical review, where people, they know their song, they just come in for a couple times. Yeah. No, there's not just show up and do your thing and leave. No.
Yeah, and Marty Craig was very big on using chorus members. She would use us to do certain things. And My Fair Lady, I had
the same thing, right?
I opened the show actually with "It's very dull in town. I'll take me to Paris." And then with Scarlett, I was helping her off the bench and doing this and that. So she used chorus people, not just standing around and singing. No. I mean, they actually were interacting.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it.
So what's your involvement in Cinderella?
Carolyn, your wife, started sending me audition invitations quite a while back.
Right.
And I couldn't do several of them, but I asked her, please keep sending them. And Cinderella came up, and I like to do something in June and July. That's kind of a down period for me. In terms of down, I mean, I don't have a lot going on except yard work. Right. I sing with the Montgomery College Chamber Singers, and so I'm busy in the fall and the spring. Right. But once the spring semester's over, it's like, okay, what now? And we usually travel in August.
Okay.
So
good idea. Get out of Texas.
Yeah, we get out of Texas and go to Colorado. Although looking at Colorado temperatures, I'm not sure whether that's going to be a wise deal. And save a lot of money. Anyway. Yeah. Cinderella came up, and it was the perfect timing. Sure. Of a show, and I had actually sung "Do I Love You Because You're Beautiful" at a friend's wedding.
Oh, really? Okay.
Years ago, and I picked it out. I thought she asked me to sing, and I said, "Well, I'll sing, but I get to pick the song." Right. And you won't know what it is, but trust me, it'll be appropriate. And so I was familiar with the music, from Cinderella, and I had never seen, or I don't remember having seen Cinderella, although I have this vague recollection of watching Julie Andrews do it. Right. Probably in black and white.
Probably, yeah, probably.
But I auditioned, and Deborah offered me the part of King Maximillian. I was pretty sure I was going to get it after the auditions because there weren't any other old guys there that could sing. Actually, there weren't any other old guys there. And then the other involvement, probably most people don't know about, but the original guy that was offered the role of that Zach Davis has. Right.
The steward.
The steward. Lionel. Right. He dropped out for some reason. He withdrew, and Deborah was looking for someone, and she mentioned it several times. And Zach and I had sung together at Montgomery College. He's got a gorgeous voice.
Absolutely, no.
And he loves to act, and he had also been in Miss Saigon. And so I called him up. Yeah. I said, before I submit your name, I need to know if you'd be interested in doing this. He's up at Sam Houston now, studying to be a nurse. And he said, oh, I'd love to. So I gave him Deborah's email, and I said, email this lady, see if you can set up an audition. I think you would be perfect, and my guess is she will too. Right. And the next thing you know, he went, he auditioned, and she said, you got the job. I mean, there was no waiting or whatever. And I think his personality and just the way he is, he's a perfect Lionel. Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm really happy about that. So I did have a little extra involvement with Cinderella in terms of casting.
You're famous for some other things, though. This is interesting. So I got to know you from Buddy Holly, but you also send out a newsletter, kind of a financial newsletter type information. Tell us how you got started on that.
I don't know that I'm famous.
Okay, you're making $1 million a year, but you know.
Actually, what happened was, singing with the chamber singers in Montgomery College, I get involved sometimes in some of the other music department activities, and they have this. Most of the students join a music teachers organization called MTNA. Okay. Music Teachers National Association, I think it stands for. And they meet weekly or every 2 weeks. And, I wanted to support what they were doing. So I paid my $12 dues or whatever, and I decided I would attend meetings. Well, like many student type things where there really wasn't a reason to have a meeting. Right. They just kind of got together and there really wasn't anything happening. Okay. So I said to them, if you'd like, I've had 5 years or several years, actually more than 5 years in the financial services industry. Right. I learned a great deal. I would be glad to give little 20, 25-minute presentations to you all and give you handouts because it will at least give the meeting something
Right.
of value.
Right.
And they said, "Oh, great!" So then I had to start putting together little presentations, etc. And I did,
Yes.
and eventually, what happened is by doing that and having them ask questions about what to me
Right.
were very basic
Yes.
things. They had no knowledge whatsoever, and I thought to myself, nobody gets an education in this kind of thing. Just
No,
the
don't.
basics of finance and investing and budgeting. And we're thrown out there on our own after we graduate from college and told, make your retirement planning decisions and,
No training.
do what you're doing. And there's nothing.
You can have an MBA and still not know what to do.
Absolutely. So I thought to myself, maybe I'll do something. And it eventually ended up, I was sending out so many presentations to everybody that asked me for information. I thought I'll write some papers instead.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked, probably it took me 6 months to write those papers. And I was working with some other people helping me edit them and whatever. And when I finally got them done, and I put them in 4 age groups.
Mm-hmm.
People in their 20s,
Mm-hmm.
people in their 30s and 40s, people in their 50s and
Mm-hmm.
mid 60s, and then people older than 68.
Mm-hmm.
And because what you need to do changes
Absolutely.
as you grow older and get nearer to retirement. And then I just decided I would back those up with articles that supported what I was saying in the paper.
Right.
Okay. You could read the papers, and if you really read the papers, and for the most part, nothing in the articles that I send out is any different than what you would read in the papers, but it gives me credibility because someone else is saying it.
Absolutely. You always need that backup, right?
I mean, this financial guru or this expert is saying what I've said in the paper.
Right. It's just a Dale Carnegie technique, right?
So, as time has gone on, as I work with organizations, just as with Buddy Holly, I offered that cast.
Mm-hmm.
If you'd like the papers, and I'll put you on the distribution. And if you don't want anything, just email me and tell me to take you off. You can always hit the delete button, but I'm not selling anything. I'm not doing anything other than just sending out what I think is valuable information for people so they can make informed decisions when they're faced with doing something. Well, that's basically what it is. But when this show ends, I'll offer this cast, other than the mice.
I don't think you have paper less than
the opportunity, if they want to get this stuff, they can, and if they don't, it doesn't hurt my feelings one way or the other. It's just, I kind of feel like I need to give back something. I have this knowledge.
Yes.
And I now have 5 years or 6 years, however many it was, I don't quite remember, but of experience where I really learned a great deal. And then I've had the opportunity to put that in practice since I retired.
Right.
And we've been through 2 horrendous recessions. 2000 to 2001, and then this current one from 2008 and on.
Right.
And Elise and I are very comfortable and we haven't been decimated by these things because we're following a very disciplined strategy, and I try to impart that kind of information. Hey, it worked for me, it might work for you.
Right.
Try it if you like, don't try it if you like.
Right. Well, unfortunately, I think a lot of us have a strategy, but the strategy is no strategy. Right?
Yes.
It's the do-nothing strategy. We are paralyzed either with too much facts or insufficient knowledge to do anything. And then, of course, because although it's probably one of the more important things, if not the most important thing in our life, you don't count religion, we just don't give time to it, though. It's, I got to do work. Yeah, I got to do this. I think I'll do some fun stuff. And the financial planning and actions always seem to get short shrift.
And the reality is that you only need to spend less than 4 hours a year doing this.
Right.
That's all you need if you just are disciplined and say, okay, I'm going to do this. You know, it might take a little longer to get things set up. But once you're set up, it's just a little teeny bit of maintenance. Mm-hmm. The problem that you're talking about in terms of not knowing what to do, so having no strategy, is most people, if they're in a 401k and they're disciplined enough to stay in it and not take the money out or borrow it, they're afraid of the market and the volatility in the market, so they put their money in the stable value fund or in some money market fund where they're, at least nowadays, for the past several years, don't get any return.
Right.
And because they feel ignorant about stocks and whatever, they're afraid to get in there.
Right.
Or they take the opposite tack and the market's going one way and they chase it and they get everything in. I remember a really good friend, and she was close to retirement. Mm-hmm. And this was back in the pre-2000.
Right.
Had all her money in Fidelity's aggressive growth fund.
Yes.
Well, that fund has still never recovered, because it was all these .com companies and whatever.
Okay, well, it's going up.
You know, she probably lost 2/3 of her investment
because
she was not thinking about or didn't know about, hey, when you're this close to retirement, you don't want to be in aggressive stuff.
It's a common story.
Right, and you see it all the time, people chasing the market rather than...
Right. Well, you know, one of my favorite folks, Ed Seykota, he was a very successful day trader, but he's gotten really into philosophy. And it's true. He basically, he always asks these questions, kind of like you do in your papers. But the questions are seemingly flippant, but you got to think about them a while, and then you realize what he's saying is true. And it's part of it is to get your attention, but part of it also is a truism about people's behavior, and he's really into behaviors now. For instance, we are always taught to buy low, sell high, but unfortunately, our behavior is to buy high, sell low. You know what I'm talking about?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Chasing this market. Well, this is going on the up. It starts dropping, we start selling.
Right. And the thing is, if people could get it into their heads, when they're in the wealth accumulation stage, which is from when you start working until somewhere between 10 and 5 years before retirement. If the market's down, that's good.
That's right.
Because you're buying.
Good. Exactly.
You're buying low.
Exactly.
If you had the ideal situation, okay, when you started, if the market's going up at 8% a year, okay, and you started investing, you would want it to be down, down the entire time you were investing until you were ready to retire, and then you would want it to go shooting up to that. And now, everybody thinks a down market's bad. When you're buying, a down market is wonderful.
It's wonderful.
It's stocks on sale. It's mutual funds on sale.
Absolutely.
But most people tend to react and say, "Oh my God, I'm being decimated," rather than I've got a chance to buy a bargain. If they would just keep putting their money in and reallocate every year, bam, they would retire rich.
Right. Yeah, but unfortunately, the strategy is we're basically going on our gut feelings, and it's the wrong thing to do.
Yes, emotion has no business in retirement planning and wealth accumulation.
Well, we'll definitely have to talk about some more about this financial planning sometime. If heaven exists, what do you want God to say when you get to the pearly gates?
We need a few more bases in the chorus, in the angel chorus.
John, you come over here. Steve, you come over here.
Right.
Oh, that'd be great. Thanks for joining us.
Sure.
Yeah.